Kawhi Leonard has been exactly what the Raptors signed up for when they traded for him last summer. He's averaging 40 on 62% shooting through 2 games against Philadelphia. And despite those numbers, somehow the Sixers managed to cobble together a Game 2 win on the road and took home court for themselves. And that's exactly where they are for tonight's Game 3. Hello there again. Welcome into another playoff edition of Game Time from our Atlanta studio. Good to have you along with us. I'm Matt Weiner. We've got a lot of folks here.
Matt, did you say he was averaging 40?
40 for the series so far. 40.
And they said somebody was playing good defense on him.
Isaiah Thomas, Jason Terry, Grant Hill right over there. I say playoff basketball in Philadelphia, and you think what?
Julius Irving and a little AI.
Right.
But when AI was playing with Eric Snow, I used to always ask Eric Snow every summer, man, why don't you shoot the ball?
Not his job.
Not his job. He's giving to AI every single time.
Yeah, when I think of Philly, I think of Dr. J, Moses Malone, and Andrew Toney.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Was it the Boston Strangler, right?
Boston Strangler.
Yeah. The answer, baby, AI.
Yeah. None of you mentioned Barkley, huh?
Well, we associate him more with Phoenix.
Yeah,
because they went to the finals.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, because they went to the finals in Phoenix.
He's pretty good there.
Yeah.
All right, we're right in the thick of the conference semifinals, and in the East tonight, the Raptors look to rediscover their offense and reclaim home court in Game 3. Game 2 in Toronto was a grind. The Raptors shot just 36%. Philly managed its fewest points all season, just 94, to hold on for a 5-point win. Jimmy Butler at 30, he set up Joel Embiid for the final basket of the night, but that was just his second of the game and the lowest scoring outing of his young playoff career. The guy's Embiid has yet to dominate through 2 games. He's probable again tonight because of his persistently sore knee. I would expect him to play. Says even if this doesn't turn out to be a big scoring series for him, well, he'll find a way to contribute.
You know, I've always figured out somehow. I've been in these type of situations before, so I'm gonna figure it out. I'm not too worried about it. But at the end of the day, it's all about doing whatever I'm asked to. If it's setting screens and roll to the basket and find guys when I'm double or triple team, I'm gonna keep on doing that. I'm not gonna force the issue because I'm not averaging the same amount of points I was before because I'm not scoring as much. So if it only takes me, if I only have to take 5 shots a game, but also to make sure that I make the right decisions, that's what I'm going to do.
Embiid was under the weather in Game 2, 12 points, 5 assists, but 6 turnovers. Jet, what do the Sixers need from him the rest of this series, whether it's scoring or, as he discussed, game management?
Yeah, I think for Embiid to be effective in this series because of the defense of Marc Gasol, right, and Ibaka, the two-headed monster, he's going to be tough to score in an individual matchup. So he's going to have to look for opportunities in transition, trailing in late, taking perimeter shots. But in the half court, they're going to double team him. They're going to make him play in a crowd and make him facilitate and get the ball out. Did a great job at the end of Game 2 finding Jimmy Butler for a huge bucket. So he'll have to continue to do that. And he may not be the leading scorer for Philly in this series, but if he can facilitate, rebound the ball well, and still be a defensive presence, he'll be a factor in this series.
Well, he was dealing with gastroenteritis in Game 2. Ugh.
Bubble guts.
Also a 7-foot former defensive player of the year in Marc Gasol. And with Gasol guarding him, so far Embiid is just 3 of 14. The 76ers are minus 21, while they've outscored the Raptors by 28 when Gasol is off the court. What is Gasol? Obviously, he's a great defender, former defensive player of the year. What does he do in particular against Embiid that gives him trouble?
Well, he's a big body. He's got a big frame. So Embiid, as you see on a lot of those clips, he wants to be able to back you down, overpower you inside, or use his ability to handle the basketball and get by bigger players. And so Gasol is savvy enough, understands angles, how to play defense. So Embiid can't get by him with his quickness and speed, but he also can't overpower him by backing him down. I'd like to see Embiid work a little harder to catch the ball closer to the basket. And he's catching it in that mid-post, 10, 15 feet away from the basket, which Gasol's doing a good job of meeting him early, driving him out, and Embiid's giving up that position. And now, now he's facing the basket, and he's struggling. He's dealing with health issues. But Gasol just understands angles, knows how to play. Not a shot blocker, not a guy that's going to wow you in terms of protecting the rim, but just understands how to defend, how to move his feet, and how to make you make tough shots over length. And he's done a really good job, as you've talked about here in these first 2 games.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, Grant. And when you talk about Gasol, Gasol has been in the league long enough to witness this transition from the bigs. When he came into the league, the bigs had to guard in the post. So he learned how to defend and become a great post defender. And Embiid right now in this new NBA has been playing against non-post defenders. So he's been able to use his brute force, bag people down. And well, now he's got a guy who understands how to play defense in the post. And I think that's given him some problems. And he's having a difficult time trying to figure out how to play against a real good post defender as opposed to, just using his brute strength. So that's the advantage that Gasol has against Embiid right now.
And by the way, if you're a purist or just a fan of old school basketball, how great is that? We've got 2 7-footers actually bodying up and dealing with each other in that sense. We don't see a lot of that these days.
Yeah, and not only do you not see a lot of it, but that's really what the series is boiling down to.
A lot of it,
is those 2 big men. And when Masai went out and made the trade for Gasol, he didn't bring in an offensive player. He brought in a defensive center to go along with, probably the best perimeter defenders in the East. So defensively, Toronto has a chance to be a juggernaut, and they are.
And by the way, Embiid's struggles with Gasol go further back than these 2 games. In 7 games matched up with Gasol over his career, Embiid has averaged just 14 points and shot under 33%. Not a huge sample, but interesting numbers nonetheless. Game 3 coming up tonight in Philadelphia. Raptors had the 3rd best road record in the league this year. What do they come up with? Speaking of bigs, Serge Ibaka getting himself, I guess that's getting himself ready.
I hope he ate a good meal and not that stuff he be cooking.
Live look in Philadelphia, where the 76ers were a much, much better team this season. Not only did they win 11 more on the road, their net rating was over 10 points per 100 possessions better on their home floor. But, as we know, defense travels. So does play-by-play voice Matt Devlin. The Raptors brought both to Philadelphia for games 3 and 4, and we've got Matt here with us on Game Time. Welcome to the show. Thanks for stopping by. And I want you to forget the offensive struggles of Game 2 for a moment. Toronto has held opponents under 100 now in 6 straight games, held the Magic, and now the Sixers under 42% shooting in all 7 postseason games so far. What has impressed about this defense so far in a playoff setting?
Well, I think that it's been something that Nick Nurse has talked about really since day number 1, known as an offensive coach, but he actually said, I really started thinking about it at the defensive end some 30 years ago, and they made a name for himself there. So that's really where ultimately he has been able to get total complete buy-in. And how are you able to do that? Well, you have the right players. And Toronto Raptors, from a defensive standpoint, certainly have that, Matt. And they've been beyond impressive, right? You mentioned all the numbers. This is certainly an unbelievable string that they have put together. And as he said, even going back to game number 2, he's certainly pleased with the effort, because that's certainly what it takes on the defensive end.
Yeah, Philly shooting just 39% for the series so far. All right, now to the offense, which obviously struggled in game 2. Philadelphia had something to do with that. From which players not named Kawhi and Pascal will they need more as this series progresses?
Well, I think, certainly Marc Gasol is one that comes to mind, and the combination of Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka in game number 2 combined for just 7 points, 8 rebounds. They certainly need more from him, and the major switch that happened, the adjustment that happened, was putting Tobias Harris onto Marc Gasol, and certainly putting Joel Embiid on Pascal Siakam. So you're going to need more from Marc Gasol, but also Danny Green. As poorly as the Toronto Raptors played in game number 2, they had a chance with just over 10 seconds left to tie it, and Danny missed a three-pointer. We understand he was second in the NBA during the regular season, just behind Joe Harris in three-point percentage. So you would certainly look for him to have a bounce-back game. And then Kyle Lowry, the other 3 starters, right? And Kyle Lowry is really a third option now on this team, but when he is aggressive and gets into the paint, it certainly begins to open up other things offensively for the Toronto Raptors. And then you're going to have to get something from the bench: Serge Ibaka, Fred VanVleet, and Norman Powell.
Matt, we know that Jimmy Butler went off in game 2 after a really quiet game 1 in this series. It seemed as though there was such an emphasis on not letting Embiid get going that the defense would totally collapse, and then now they get caught in rotations, and whoever's rotating out to Jimmy Butler, would obviously, they were late, he was getting hot. It also looks like Embiid's hurt. Gasol's doing a pretty good job one-on-one. Do you think there'll be some adjustments defensively, particularly with the rotations, how getting out to shooters, and of course guarding that man, Joel Embiid?
It's a great point. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves, but where do you go, right? When you look at this is why the Philadelphia 76ers ended up making the deal to bring in Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris, of course. But when you think about trying to slow down Joel Embiid, left knee tendinitis, as well as being ill in the last game, and then also Ben Simmons, you look at both of their numbers through the first 2 games, and you would think that, hey, you're doing about as good of a job as you can, but as you mentioned, 10 points in game number 1 for Jimmy Butler, and then he just breaks out and has a massive game. By the way, earlier in the year, he had a big game, and he is somebody against the Raptors. He's somebody, when he was in Chicago, he had some big moments against the Toronto Raptors, and I think that's certainly something that you're going to have to keep an eye on to see exactly what they decide to do with Jimmy tonight.
Matt, when let's talk about Nick Nurse, the coach. This is his first playoff loss after a big playoff win at home. From being around him, how do you think he will adjust to this game 3 on the road, and how is he feeling about his team right now?
I think he's feeling good. It's a veteran group that has certainly accomplished, and he's someone that understands that you have to have buy-in defensively. They have had that. And when you look at the adjustments, I mean, 21 uncontested threes they missed. So you make a couple more of those and things are going to be okay, right? Everybody jokes and everybody says it's a make-or-miss league. Well, you go back to game number 2. What did you want? Better defense out of this team? I know Jimmy Butler had a massive night, but when you look at what they were able to do collectively as a unit defensively, they were superb. You do need a little bit of relief offensively. The Raptors, unfortunately, just couldn't get that. So it has been a group that has been even keel throughout, and I think that starts with the head coach, Nick Nurse. He doesn't necessarily overreact to any sort of situation that confronts this team, and I would think that would be the same tonight. I do think, though, that there'll be more aggressive in game number 3 here tonight from an offensive standpoint. If they have an open shot, I think that you'll see them, go ahead, take the shot instead of maybe making the extra pass. But I think I read where they made 67 more passes in game 2 than they did in game 1. They had a ton of open shots, and I kind of go back to, the coach can't make the shots, right? So what are you going to do, within that? Maybe there's going to be a couple of things that change from a nuance standpoint, but I would look for them maybe to be a little bit more aggressive offensively, specifically Marc Gasol, Kyle Lowry, and then Danny Green. He's at the back end of a clock, as the ball certainly swings around the perimeter for an open 3.
He's 2 of 10 from three-point range so far. Hey, we appreciate the time. That's Matt Devlin, who is the only local play-by-play voice doing TV for his team left in the league at this point. Congratulations on that.
That's it. To an entire country of Canada. It's a lot of fun.
Very
cool.
A
lot of fun.
Appreciate the time. Have a good one tonight.
You got it. All right, thank you so much.
I was going to say, we play for 3 college coaches that we felt like they were taking every shot. I mean, I felt like playing for Coach Knight. I'm sure you played, for Lou Olson and Coach K. Like if you missed the shot, you were like, oh God, oh God, I'm sorry I missed.
Well, in today's NBA, guys feel like they have freedom to shoot the three, and sometimes, as Matt mentioned, it just comes down to making shots. Philly obviously defensively had something to do with it, but Toronto's a better offensive team than what they showed in games.
No, when you go back and watch the film, I mean, they had plenty of opportunities to knock down wide open three-point shots. And Zeke, the saying, Grant, is you pass up a good shot to get a great one. Well, they had great looks. Yeah. The ball just didn't go in the hole. So right. I don't think there's an adjustment from a Toronto standpoint. They just need to continue to trust it, continue to move the ball, and they will make shots. Danny Green's a much better three-point shooter than 2 for 10. The team as a whole shooting 29% this series. If they heat up, this thing will be over sooner than later.
Yeah, he was the second best in the league in terms of percentage. And it's easy to forget because they lost the game that they were still good defensively in game 2. And as we mentioned, that travels. That goes on the road. That stays with them throughout the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, look, for the most part, they took their shots. They got their shots. They were unable to make them. That will happen. But defensively, they did a good job. Obviously, Jimmy Butler went off for 30 points, and that was really what decided the game. But this team, although this team has changed through the years, you have veterans out there. You have guys who've been in playoffs before, and they've lost with home court advantage and still been able to come back. So they did it last series. They lost the first game against Orlando in the first round. So mentally, I think they'll be able to regroup, refocus, and give themselves an opportunity to win here in Game 3. Whether they will or not remains to be seen, but I don't think there'll be any lingering effects. They'll come out, play with confidence, and be able to move past that bad shooting performance collectively as a unit.
And your mindset is you're hoping that, as a player, those same shots that you missed the other night, you're hoping in Game 3, man, I hope I get those same looks and I hope I get those same shots.
Right.
And you're hoping that the opponent thinks that they did a good job defensively and that they're going to give you those same looks again.
Right.
Because you're like thinking, oh, man, I just hope I can eat in this spot again tonight.
Nick Nurse called the offense stand-aroundish, which I'm pretty sure is not a word, but kind of tells you what they were doing or what he thought they were doing. But if Devlin's number is right, 21 uncontested threes that they missed, that's not going to happen again, right?
No. Especially for a guy like Danny Green.
No.
I mean, he and Jason Terry. Grant and I can't speak to this, but Danny Green and Jason Terry, I mean, them two guys, they don't miss when they get shots.
Well, Philly's certainly aware of that as well and probably feels like they dodged a bullet if that's the case. 21. Wow. All right, more coming up here. Coming up, maybe he hasn't exactly met his match in this series, but Philly thinks they found the right guy to guard Kawhi Leonard. We'll get into that matchup when we come back.